What is the number one skill that you need to be able to express yourself clearly in English? It's vocabulary. If you don't have the right words that you want to say when you speak, well, you're not going to be able to express yourself. But I have some good news. Today, you are going to learn 250 new English expressions with pictures. Hi, I'm Vanessa from SpeakEnglishWithVanessa.com, and like always, I have created an amazingly huge, important PDF worksheet, more like an ebook for today's lesson, with all 250 expressions, definitions, sample sentences, and at the bottom of this worksheet, you can answer Vanessa's challenge question so that you never forget what you've learned. You don't want to miss this free PDF worksheet. It has so much valuable vocabulary and information for you to help you express yourself. And it's free! You can click on the link in the description to download that free PDF worksheet today. Today we're going to take a look at pictures in 5 different categories. Some of these pictures are the pictures that I took in my life, so I'm excited to share them with you and give you a little window into Vanessa's life. Let's get started with our first category, which is meals and food, a very integral part of our lives. Are you ready to get started? Let's do it. For our first food picture, I'd like to show you comfort food. This picture is comfort food to most Americans because it is a typical Thanksgiving meal. It is a home-cooked meal, and we usually have a roasted turkey for Thanksgiving. It's very familiar, so it makes you feel like you're back home experiencing some special part of childhood, and it's a really traditional meal. So I hope that someday you have the chance to experience Thanksgiving dinner in the US. This picture is fine dining. For fine dining, sometimes we say, we are going to wine and dine. You can see the wine here. Usually the portions are kind of small in this type of gourmet restaurant. Sometimes we call this a high-end restaurant. And because the portion size is small, it doesn't mean that it's cheaper. Usually it is more expensive, but that's just the way it goes. Usually you only go to these type of high-end restaurants on special occasions. The next food picture is very different. It is a fast food picture. Unfortunately, this is really common all around the world now, but junk food is becoming more and more common. Here you can see a burger and fries. Oftentimes people purchase this through the drive-thru. So they will drive through the drive-thru and pick it up and eat it in the car. This is a very unhealthy experience. Sometimes we say that if you purchase something and it's fast food and it comes in a brown bag, that's a brown bag special. Well, in my opinion, this type of food is not very special, but it is something that's really common. Here you can see the opposite, some snacks. And these snacks are healthy snacks. In my house, if you want to grab a snack, I always recommend to my kids that they can grab some fruit, some nuts, some dried fruit. These things are really healthy and they're not just junk food like we saw in the previous picture. But sometimes it's nice to have a treat for a snack. You might have chips or something like this as a special treat. It's a fun expression to say, you get the munchies. Sometimes I get the munchies at night, and when I do, I try to eat something healthy, like some berries, some nuts, maybe some yogurt, kind of healthy snack. This type of snack here is called trail mix. In this type of box, someone is not taking it on a trail, but we mix all of those items together, dried fruit and nuts, sometimes pretzels, sometimes a little bit of chocolate, and you mix it all together and you take it on a hike. This is a favorite snack in my household. Now, this food is generally considered healthy food. If you are on a diet, these types of foods might be something that you eat. So you might eat more vegetables, more high quality fats like avocado or salmon. If you are on a diet, you're usually trying to cut out unhealthy foods. This here, I think, I'm not a professional, but it seems like a balanced diet. There are nuts and vegetables and meat and just quality ingredients. This is a balanced diet. Generally, that's what you try to eat every day, right? Is a balanced diet. But sometimes people are allergic to certain items and they might have what we call dietary restrictions. So I know some people who cannot eat the nuts in this picture. They are allergic to cashews, almonds, and walnuts. Unfortunate. I love those things. So I hope that they're not missing out too much. But if you have dietary restrictions, it's usually because you have an allergy or your doctor said you're not allowed to eat those items. All right, let's go to the next category, which is very different from food. It is scenery and places. This is a city that is close to my heart. This is the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You can see some skyscrapers in this skyline. The skyline is usually that beautiful image that you see at night when you can see all of the outline of the buildings. These are skyscrapers. Sometimes if you live in an apartment building that is as tall as those buildings, we call that a high-rise. So you might live in a high-rise apartment, but here these are mostly office buildings, so we call them skyscrapers. This is the downtown area of Pittsburgh. It's very unique because it's surrounded by 3 rivers, and there's this cool red incline that you can go up and get a great view of the city with its distinct, recognizable skyline with all of the wonderful bridges as well. The next picture is a big city. In fact, I think it is one of the biggest cities in the world, Tokyo, Japan. The metropolitan area of this city encompasses so many people. Maybe you don't live in the downtown area, but the metropolitan area, so the extended area of the city, is huge. So many people live in Tokyo. It is highly densely populated. That means there's a lot of people who live in a small area. A kind of negative term that we use for big cities is a concrete jungle. You can get the image here. It's not full of trees and greenery. There are lots of parks in Tokyo, I imagine, but we still call this a concrete jungle. There's so much concrete. That's just what it is. It's a big city. And oftentimes when you live in a big city at night, what do? You might go out on the town. This is a lovely expression that means you do things that happen at night. You might go to bars, you might go dancing. There are lots of things that you can do at night in a big city. You might go out on the town. Another characteristic of big cities is that they are extremely busy. So here, this is New York City, just a busy street. You can see the Flatiron building at the top of this. That little pointed building is the Flatiron building. There's a ton of traffic and a lot of pedestrians. Pedestrians are people who are walking. It is really crowded in New York City. I don't think it's as crowded as Tokyo, but it's extremely crowded. And when you live in a big city, you often have a fast pace of life. A fast pace of life, maybe you have to have a long commute. You have to take lots of public transport. You're always around people. There's always noise. This is a fast pace of life, which is the opposite of our next picture. The mountains. This is a picture of my husband and my son several years ago on one of our favorite hikes. There's a lovely rock here. It looks like a cliff, but it's not a cliff. It goes down gently. But here you can see wonderful mountains. This is one of our favorite mountains to climb. It's not a very difficult hike, but it has a great view at the top. I want to tell you about a fun idiom. When you say you can move mountains to someone, that means that you are encouraging them that they can do impossible things. You can move mountains. Lovely encouragement. And sometimes we say also as encouragement, the best view comes after the hardest climb. This hike was not extremely difficult, but for my children, they have short legs, they're small children, it's a hard climb. And we get the best view after a hard climb. But we can also use this metaphorically. If you've been struggling a lot to learn English, you've been working hard, and then you finally get to go to the US and you can speak English with people, it feels so satisfying because the best view comes after the hardest climb. You can see where that metaphor plays in. Another mountain metaphor that I want to tell you about is when we're talking about someone who is really influential. You might say, my grandfather was a mountain of a man. It doesn't mean his body was big, but it means he was really influential and important in my life. He was a mountain of a man. He had strong values. He was really influential. The opposite of the mountains is the beach. Here we have a coastal picture. You can see the coast of California in this picture. And all of these people here, they live on the coast. We generally don't say I live on the beach. We say I live on the coast. These houses here are on the coast and they have great ocean views. They may even get a salty ocean breeze wafting over their houses. And you can see here the waves. You might not be able to see very well in this picture, but at the bottom, maybe you can see here, this little area down here is where the tide has come up. The tide is when the ocean rises and the ocean falls several times a day. And here we're talking about the coming and going of something. We can use this metaphorically to talk about the things in your life going from bad to good. The tide has changed. Finally, it looks like I'm going to get a promotion. If you thought you weren't going to get a promotion for a long time, and then you get a meeting with your boss and he hints that you're going to get a promotion, you might think, finally, the tide has changed and I'm going to get recognized for all my hard work and I'm going to get a promotion. So these are some metaphorical ways we can talk about the tide and the coast. This picture is not at the beach. Instead, it is a wide open space, a totally different type of landscape. This is a field in the middle of the US. Really, we might even say it's in the middle of nowhere. It's not exactly a polite thing to say. If you live in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the countryside, you can say this, I think, about where you live, but it's not really polite to say about where someone else lives because it implies where you live is not important. It's nowhere. But if you live somewhere like this, you live in the middle of the countryside, you might say, I live in the middle of nowhere. And it can be kind of like a little joke. This place is also extremely remote. Remote means it's in the middle of nowhere. It's difficult to get to. You have to drive for a long distance. Maybe there's not good roads or good transport. It's extremely remote. Sometimes the most remote places, though, are the most interesting to visit, in my opinion. Here in this wide open space, you can see for miles and miles. I don't know what people would say in English-speaking countries who don't use miles, but in the US, we use miles. It means long distances, kilometers, and we say you can see for miles and miles, which is kind of cool, I think. This type of countryside we call farmland because it's a farm, but if you live in the middle of nowhere surrounded by farms, you could say there's a lot of farmland around me. This little town, is Black Mountain, North Carolina. It's about 30 minutes from where I live, and it is a relaxed town. We might even call it a sleepy town, a sleepy mountain village. This is extremely different from that previous image we saw of Tokyo. Very different. It's a sleepy town. It's very peaceful, and there is a slowed down way of life in this type of town. A word that I like to use to describe towns like this is charming. It's a charming place. When you walk into little shops, you can see the real people who live in those places. The people who greet you in those shops or in the restaurants, they live in that town, and they're probably really friendly and excited that you're visiting their slow, relaxed, sleepy town. So if you get the chance to visit a small town in the US, I highly recommend it. This is another small town. It is a rural town in the middle of nowhere. This is where I went to college. This is Erskine College. You can see some of the buildings here. Do you think that this college is in the middle of nowhere or in a big city? This town is called Due West. And we had a little slogan in college, due west of what? Nobody knows because it's in the middle of nowhere. It's a really rural town, and it was a one stoplight town. But this stoplight did not come until much later. There was no stoplight in this town when I went to college here, just stop signs. It was 1 square mile, very small. You can see the tennis courts take up more space than many things. It's just a very small town where everyone knows everyone. Or sometimes we even say everybody knows everybody. And this means that word passes fast. So we often in college we said, a little bird told me that you missed your class this morning. A little bird told me that he's dating this girl. Oh, a little bird told me. This is the rumors that fly around. Another very similar expression that we use in small towns is, I heard it through the grapevine. You're not going to say, Susan told me this, Sarah told me this. No, it's a little more indirect. I heard it through the grapevine that you are engaged. Oh, it's a secret, but it's not really, because in a small town, everyone knows everyone. All right, let's go to our next category, which is vacation. Here is a vacation picture at the beach where I went to Costa Rica with my family when I was pregnant with my daughter. You can see my little pregnant belly there. And here we are at the beach. So we might say, we enjoyed the sand and sea at the beach. My kids love collecting seashells and playing in the waves and building sandcastles. They could really just sit in the sand all day. It was a wonderful vacation. As you can see, a beautiful place to be. Another place you might go on vacation is the mountains. This is a mountain lake. In my opinion, it's the best of both worlds. You can enjoy the mountains and the lake at the same time. This looks like someone might have rented a cabin. There's a little white cabin in the distance, but when you rent a cabin, it's a great way to have a relaxing, nature-filled vacation, sitting around the campfire, listening to stories, telling stories, and maybe scary, spooky stories. You might even be able to go out on a boat on the lake. Another fun activity that is quite relaxing. For this next picture, you might wonder what in the world is happening. This is a staycation. This is the opposite of vacation. For vacation, you go somewhere usually far away, Costa Rica, or you drive 3 hours away to go to the beach. You're going on vacation to a different destination. But here, this lovely circle window was in a cabin that Dan and I rented for a little staycation. Our kids went to stay with their grandparents, and we didn't want to go far away, but we rented this cute little cabin, and it had a nice circle window with a lovely little pond out front. There's Dan waving at me through the window. And I think that something about COVID helped us to want to visit places near us, visit local places, visit places in our own country. And sometimes I like to just visit places nearby. It can be interesting and it's not too much to plan. You just can get an Airbnb. That's what we did. We rented an Airbnb. That's really common in the US to do that, and enjoyed a local stay. This was about 20 minutes from where we live. We did not take a day trip. So a day trip is when you don't spend the night somewhere. You just go for the day, and then you come back and you sleep at home. But this could also be a staycation if you're trying to do things locally without too much planning or go too far away. But even if you have a staycation, you can still see the sights. So here in this little town where we visited, we stayed at this Airbnb, we saw some local sights, we went to some local restaurants, we hiked some local trails, and it was still a great staycation. The opposite of that is a resort. Sometimes we call this an all-inclusive resort if they have food, entertainment. I see here swimming pools, there's playgrounds, there's things to do. This is an all-inclusive resort. It is also a beach resort. You can see the ocean there. I have never been to this type of resort before. Generally, I do something like this, a staycation, or maybe renting a little Airbnb. But an all-inclusive resort could probably be fun. Some all-inclusive resorts are adults only, and this just depends on the atmosphere of the place, and some are more family friendly. I'm curious for you, have you ever been to an all-inclusive resort? Let me know in the comments if you have. Generally, when we travel, we try to stay at local people's houses, like an Airbnb or a local farm, or these type of small experiences. But I'm very curious what this might be like. So let me know in the comments if you recommend it. The next type of vacation is not a slow, lazy type of vacation. It is active backpacking. Have you ever been on a backpacking adventure? I have, and it is very fun. Not since having kids, but I did this before having kids. You can go hiking and camping, put everything in your backpack and just go into the woods. Feels very refreshing and freeing, very wild. We sometimes use a fun expression to talk about this. This is rugged. This is a rugged adventure. You can even say a person is rugged. He is rugged. And it generally means someone who can handle tough situations. Maybe they can sleep on the ground outside, or if it's raining, they don't feel bothered. They are rugged. So this is a type of rugged vacation. This person, even though they have a big backpack, I imagine they are still traveling light. Have you ever packed for a weekend trip and you had 2 full suitcases? And you realized, why do I have so much stuff? You are not packing light. This person fit everything in their backpack, all their food, all their water, all their clothing, their bed, their sleeping bag, their tent, everything is in that pack. They had to pack light in order to go backpacking. Some people say that spending time in nature is a low budget activity. It is true, if you go on a hike, it is not expensive, but if you go camping, especially backpacking, it can become very expensive because these types of light sleeping bags, light tents, light everything, the little camping devices that you buy, those are pretty expensive. So you could go low budget for your camping experience, or you could go quite high budget depending on the type of equipment that you purchase. The final type of vacation that we're going to talk about is a road trip. This is something that is pretty essential in the US. To get anywhere, you have to drive. And most vacations, even if you're going to the beach or you're going to the mountains, involve some kind of road trip, which means pretty much at least 1 full day is in the car, part of your experience. The biggest type of road trip that you can take in the US is called a cross-country road trip, going from one coast to the other coast. I have never taken a cross-country road trip. I've flown across the country. I've gone from the south to the north, about a 10-hour drive, but I've never gone on a cross-country road trip. Maybe someday. I think that would be cool. Whenever you go on a road trip, it's essential that you make some stops along the way. For my family, we usually plan at least one big stop if we're going on a 8-hour road trip. So when we went to Pittsburgh recently, we made one big stop about halfway through, and we stopped for an hour, ran around, went to a park, got some good views, enjoyed the time, and the other stops were just quick views. We want to make sure that everyone feels good, nobody gets car sick. That's the worst. when you feel nauseous and you want to throw up in the car. We want to take these quicker stops and then longer stops. Maybe at some points of interest, possibly. We usually stop at a nice park. They have a nice bridge and there's some mountains that you can see, so it feels like an experience. There is one fun expression. It's in a famous song as well, which is, life is a highway. You get the idea here that the journey of your life is what is the most important. It's not the destination. It's not getting that big job, getting that amazing vacation. It's the journey. Life is a highway. It's just a journey. Our next category are plants and animals and some idioms related to these wonderful pictures. So here we see some bees. Are you as busy as a bee? This just means that you're busy. I've been as busy as a bee all week. It's possible that you are the queen bee. We might say, my boss is the queen bee and she always tells us what needs to be done. This isn't necessarily a negative thing. It just means that she's the one who's in control. You might often say, we are the worker bees. We just do what we need to do every day. The worker bees and the queen bees. If you are bothered, if you are annoyed by something, but you don't want to be annoyed, you want to just let it go. You might say, I don't want to have bees in my bonnet. A bonnet is like an old-fashioned hat that women used to wear. Don't get some bees in your bonnet. Just let it go. Of course, you don't want bees in your bonnet. That would be really uncomfortable, but that's the idea. Don't let it be a bee in your bonnet. Just let it go. Another wonderful bee expression is to make a beeline for something. Have you ever seen a bee just fly straight ahead? It just zooms super fast. Probably after pollinating a flower, it just is going back to the nest. Well, you might say, I made a beeline for the ice cream shop. I didn't look to the left. I didn't look to the right. I made a beeline, which just means you went straight. I made a beeline for the ice cream shop. The next animal picture is a fun one. Birds with some eggs or baby chicks in a nest. There's a lot of great bird expressions. One of them I briefly mentioned before. A little bird told me something. This means an anonymous source told me some kind of news, usually a secret. And here you can see that this bird, probably this bird and this bird's mate as well, because usually birds work together in pairs, they were busy building their nest. We can use this as humans by adding one word to this, building a nest egg. This refers to having some money saved. So if you are about to retire and you don't want to be extremely poor, you might say, I am trying to build a nest egg so that I can retire and have a good life. So you're building a nest egg. On the other hand, if we talk about killing birds, we use the expression to kill two birds with one stone. Please don't kill birds with stones. It's not a good idea. But when we use this metaphorically, we're talking about doing two good things at the same time. Why is it killing birds? Poor birds. But we might say, I like to listen to English podcasts while I drive to work. I'm killing two birds with one stone. You're learning English and you're going to work. Cool. Two good things. Not killing birds. Another fun expression with birds is the early bird catches the worm. This means if you're the first one to do something, you're the one who's going to succeed. In my opinion, this is not always true, but it sometimes is true, right? So if you are a new business and you're a business who sells coffee, if you are the first coffee shop open in your town, maybe you will get the most customers because people want coffee in the morning. And when your friend says, hey, why are you opening your coffee shop at 5 a.m.? That is too early. You need to sleep. You might say, oh, well, early bird catches the worm. We are going to get more customers. Cool. The next picture here is about cats. This is my son and my cat Pippin. Last year or 2 years ago in our garden, we planted some catnip, some little plants that cats love in the garden, and it was so sweet. Our cat would always go in the garden and lay there. In my opinion, there's nothing more beautiful than a cat just happily laying in the sun in the garden. But a little negative expression about cats, killing cats, why killing animals, why? Is curiosity killed the cat. So this expression we often use when someone is being too curious, maybe in a negative way, prying into your business. So if you are planning a surprise birthday party for your friend and your friend is asking you too many questions, they are asking you, wait, why were you calling that person? Where were you yesterday? Hey, why aren't you available on Saturday? You might say, hey, curiosity killed the cat. And it means stop asking questions. I don't want to tell you the answer. Curiosity killed the cat. Don't ask. I personally like the follow-up phrase with this. Curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought him back. So whenever someone says curiosity killed the cat to me, to get me to stop asking questions, I always say with a little joke, well, satisfaction brought him back, so satisfy me, give me some answers. But it's just a little joke. Another fun cat expression is to let the cat out of the bag. This means that you're divulging some kind of secret. If I say, oh yeah, on Saturday we're having a surprise birthday for my friend. Oh no, I let the cat out of the bag. Why is a cat in the bag? I don't know. Come on guys, stop killing birds, stop killing cats, stop putting cats in a bag. But these expressions exist, so you're welcome to use them. Another one that is very interesting. Have you ever seen a cat fall? A cat always lands on its feet. This is something that I think is incredible, always very interesting. In fact, one of my cats, not this cat, but my other cat, Luna, she jumped out of a second-story window when we used to live in an apartment when she was just a kitten, and she lived. It was amazing. She was not hurt. She had no problems. She landed on her feet and was totally fine. I could not believe it. Thankfully, she is okay. But a cat always lands on its feet. And we can even use this metaphorically to talk about ourselves. If you're having a rough time in your life, you might say, well, I think it's all going to be okay. A cat always lands on its feet. In the end, it's going to be okay. The final cat expression is, cat got your tongue? Why does a cat have your tongue? This is talking about when you don't know what to say. Maybe you're uncomfortable talking about something. So if someone says, well, what were you doing yesterday? And you don't want to tell them. You don't want to tell them what you were doing yesterday. You might stumble around and say, oh, well, it was kind of rainy, so I was just relaxing. And your friend might say, cat got your tongue. What did you really do? They can tell that you're trying to evade the question. All right, our next picture is about dogs. This is a very special picture to me. These two dogs are not mine. We were fostering these dogs. That means that before they got adopted, before they got a home, they needed to live somewhere. And the animal shelter didn't have enough space. So we said, we will temporarily keep these dogs at our house and teach them how to live in a house, how to live with children, how to be good. And my son Theo is very scared of dogs. He has always been scared of dogs, and it was really hard for him anytime he saw a dog. So we thought that this experience would help him to feel more comfortable with dogs. And you can see it was a success. He loved those puppies so much, and it really helped him to get over his fear of dogs. I've been always trying to tell him that most dogs, their bark is worse than their bite. This is the expression that means, well, they're really loud, they bark really loud, but usually they're not dangerous. yes, some dogs are dangerous, but usually their bark is worse than their bite. And this can be true for people too. Maybe someone is really rough. The way that they speak is really direct, but actually they're a kind person. You might say, don't worry, his bark is worse than his bite. We can use that for people too. Or we could say someone is all bark and no bite. This idea that if your boss is yelling at you, if you don't do this, you're gonna get fired, and this bad thing's gonna happen, and this bad thing's gonna happen. Your coworker might tell you later, hey, he's all bark and no bite. He's always threatening, but he never really does anything bad. Okay, that's always good to know, right? A really fun dog expression is to be an underdog. That means that, listen to this phrase. Everyone loves to cheer for an underdog. Everyone loves when the underdog wins. And this is just the person who's not expected to win. If there are two basketball teams and one basketball team wins 20 games, one basketball team wins 4 games, and then they play against each other, well, this team is the underdog. And if they win, it's really exciting, right? Everyone always wants the underdog to win. Our final dog expression is, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. Have you ever tried to help your parents with technology? This is the perfect example, I think, for this expression. If you try to help your mother or your grandmother, your grandfather with their phone, it can be really frustrating because it's hard to teach an old dog. Your mother is not a dog, I know. It's just a metaphor. An old dog, new tricks. It's true, but you know what? It's still possible. And I know a lot of my students are retired, they're older, but you know what? You can learn English. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be tricky, and you're probably going to learn in different ways, have different expectations on yourself. You might even think, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks like English, but it's still important for your mind to continue learning new things so that you can always be active. All right, the next picture is about horses. I have several wonderful horse idioms to share with you. This picture is on Cumberland Island in the south of Georgia, the state in the US. This is a picture that I took there. These horses are actually wild horses. Now, technically, they're not wild horses like Mongolian wild horses originally were. These horses were on this island in the early 1800s, and then people stopped living here and all of the horses continued to live here successfully. So they have rewilded themselves. They have returned back to the wild, and you can't touch them. You can't get near them. They will hurt you if you get too close to them, but it was really cool to see these wild horses. The first idiom I want to tell you about with horses is straight from the horse's mouth. And this means you want to hear the news directly from the source. You need to know exactly the truth from the first person who experienced it. So let's imagine that you hear that your neighbor is moving. One of your other neighbors tells you they're moving and this is what's happening. You might say, I want to hear this straight from the horse's mouth. So you go to your neighbor and you ask them if they're moving. This is a good way to actually get the truth, right? The next expression with a horse is to look a gift horse in the mouth. It's a little bit of an odd expression, right? But this is used often when someone gives you something for free that's maybe not really good. Like if someone gives you an old car, the old car maybe has a lot of problems, maybe it's slow, maybe it's rusted and broken a little bit. You might say, well, this car was free, so I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. I think this expression came from a time when horses were much more common, and when you purchased a horse, the best way to know if the horse was really old and going to die soon was to look at its teeth. So if someone gave you an old horse for free and you're inspecting their teeth like, oh, this is not a good horse, I don't want it, it's kind of rude because it's a free horse. You should take it, at least back then. So here we're saying, don't inspect or criticize something that was given to you as a gift. Just accept it. The next expression with horses is a fun one. Hold your horses. So whenever my son asks me questions, it's not just one question. It's like 500 questions. What's that? Where are you going? How did he say that? What did you say to Dad? When are we going to do this? I might say, hold your horses, one question at a time. When someone is going so quickly, usually with their words and their questions and their ideas, you might say, okay, hold your horses. Let's start at the very beginning and think this through. Great. All right, let's go to our next animal, and we're going to talk about some fish idioms. This is at an aquarium, the Atlanta Aquarium. You can see my husband Dan and my son here, and look at this amazing aquarium. This is one of 2 aquariums in the whole world that has whale sharks. That's that big fish. It's actually not a shark, it's a fish. But this aquarium, and I believe the Okinawa, Japan aquarium has whale sharks. So this is a really unusual fish to see in an aquarium. Isn't it beautiful? And this tank was so big, it was so cool, that the whale shark, there were 2 of them, they could swim in the tank and they could be so far back that you couldn't even see them. The tank was so big, you couldn't even see this fish sometimes. It was amazing. So if you get the chance to go to the Atlanta Aquarium, I highly recommend it. But let's talk about some fish idioms. The first one is, I've got bigger fish to fry. So if your neighbors are talking about just some petty arguments and problems, some drama in the neighborhood, you might say, I've got bigger fish to fry. I don't want to think about this petty drama. I've got my job and my family, and I need to take care of my parents. I've got bigger fish to fry. I don't have time to worry about just little drama that's happening amongst friends. I've got bigger fish to fry. Sorry, fish, you're being cooked in this idiom. The next one is a fish out of water. The first time that you go to a new job, you definitely, I would say, most likely, feel like a fish out of water. You feel uncomfortable. That's not where you belong yet. Hopefully you will become more comfortable over time. But on your first day at the job, you might feel like a fish out of water. I just felt like a fish out of water. Hopefully, after a few weeks, I'll feel more comfortable. The next expression about fish, and our last one for this section, is a big fish in a small pond. If you went to a small college or university like I did, and you are the top of your class, okay, you are a big fish in a small pond. The college is small, but you are the top of your class. You are a big fish in a small pond. If you went to a huge university and you were top of your class, well, you can't use this expression. You can't say I was a big fish in a big pond. But here we're talking about being the top, the best, the most important in a small environment. I think this is a good way to kind of be humble as well. So if you were the top of your class and someone says, whoa, you were the top of your class, that's amazing. You might say, yeah, I was a big fish in a small pond. Maybe if you'd gone to a bigger university, you wouldn't have been the top of your class. So you're kind of trying to be humble, maybe diminishing the compliment. I was a big fish in a small pond. All right, let's go to our final category, which is hobbies. The first hobby is art. This is a picture of my children's art. They create lots and lots and lots of art. So occasionally we lay it all on the floor. I take a picture of it and they can save a few items to put in a little notebook to save. But I can't save everything they make. I mean, you see here, one of these pieces of art is just a couple circles. One of these pieces of art is a picture of bones that they drew. One has some beads that they glued to a paper. I can't save all of that. But these drawings are still really special, and I want to save some of them because they're keepsakes. So each of my children has a folder with little slots, and they can put those special pieces of art, those keepsakes, in those slots to save them for the future. Sometimes we hang them on the refrigerator, sometimes we hang them on the wall, and sometimes we give them to grandparents because these types of homemade gifts, we sometimes say handmade gifts, those are the most special, right? So when I fold that and send it in the mail to their grandparents, it's really special. The next type of hobby is gaming. Some people are really into gaming. You might play video games occasionally, maybe on the weekends, maybe after school or work, or maybe never. For me, I've never been into gaming, but I know that a lot of people are. If you are really into gaming, you might say, I'm a gamer. That means you're someone who really likes to play video games. We're not talking about board games or card games. This is specifically for video games, to be a gamer. You might play on a console, you might play on a PC, you might play on a TV like this, and usually when you play video games, you are trying to level up to become better and to have a better level. I like using this expression to talk about English, that you are trying to level up your English skills by watching this lesson. I hope that you are. The next hobby is sports. You might play organized sports like basketball, soccer, football, tennis, these types of organized sports. They are also team sports. Sometimes tennis is a team sport, sometimes not, but basketball is definitely a team sport. A fun casual expression that we use when you don't want to play a basketball game, but you want to get some exercise, you might say, wanna shoot some hoops? Shoot some hoops. So my neighbor has a basketball hoop on their driveway, and they let us go shoot some hoops on their driveway. We don't have a basketball hoop, but it's okay because we can use our neighbors and go shoot some hoops. It's good exercise, it's fun, and it's just like a casual hobby activity. When you play basketball or other sports, there is offense and defense. Notice the pronunciation of these words. I'm on offense or I'm on defense. This is great. The next hobby is to do outdoorsy things. For me, I love spending time in nature. This is a little creek near my house. You can see me and my two sons just sitting here. They were splashing in the freezing cold water, but they don't care. They loved it. It was a beautiful day. We have a little picnic, enjoy our time, because I would say we are nature lovers. This is my preferred weekend activity, just enjoying some fresh air in the great outdoors. We oftentimes link the word great with outdoors. I love to go to the great outdoors, get some fresh air and sunshine, and you just feel refreshed, right? The next hobby that a lot of people have is dancing. I love the slang expression to cut a rug. Sometimes we use this for older people. So if your grandma goes to your wedding and she's dancing a lot at your wedding, you might say, wow, look at grandma cutting a rug. We don't really use this for younger people. At least I haven't heard that, but it's often associated with older people or like an older generation, cutting a rug. If you are not good at dancing, you might say, I have 2 left feet, but I'll try to dance anyway. I have 2 left feet. Or we can use kind of an idiom about dancing when you say, it takes 2 to tango. So tango is a type of dance, a type of South American dance. But when we use it takes 2 to tango, we're often using this as a metaphor. If you are in a relationship with someone, you have a boyfriend or girlfriend or a husband or wife, and you're arguing a lot, and for example, if your wife says to you, you are always the problem, your husband might say, you know what? It takes 2 to tango. That means it takes 2 people to have relationship problems. In my opinion, this is not always true. Sometimes it is someone's fault, but we often use this in relationships to say, you know what, it takes two people to have problems. It also takes two people to fix the relationship. You both have to be willing to do that. It takes two to tango, so we both have to work at it together. Well, congratulations. You just learned 250 important vocabulary expressions with pictures. I highly recommend downloading the free PDF worksheet so that you never forget all of these phrases, the definitions, the sample sentences. All of this will give you extra input to help you never forget it and use these expressions when you speak. That's so important to be able to express yourself completely. You can click on the link in the description to download that free PDF worksheet today. Well, thank you so much for learning English with me, and I'll see you again next Friday for a new lesson here on my YouTube channel. Bye! But wait, do you want more? I recommend watching this video next. 250 more important English vocabulary words with pictures. You'll learn why it's rude to say that someone is cheap, but it's polite to say that they're frugal. Watch that video with me to find out, and I'll see you there.